All right, our next cast member is Anna Gibbs. Anna is a native of Greenville, has 2 sons, and the reason she's here tonight is because of her mother and her husband. But she's also a middle school teacher, so you know she's tough.
I tend to try logic when I struggle with my illogical disorder. It seems to work in waves. I talk myself into stability, and then if I sit alone and think, the feelings and adrenaline return full force, requiring me to begin the entire process again. Sometimes I'm up for the challenge. Sometimes I have no choice but to push through. And sometimes I give into the fallacy of my weakness and climb in bed. This pattern will never end in my lifetime. I know this to be true. No one deserves this type of sickness any more than a person deserves cancer or diabetes or congenital heart disease. Yet for some reason, mental illness seems to be portrayed as a condition that humans have the power to control or permanently cure through determination and faith. I guess it's because neurons that are firing incorrectly are not detectable on a CAT scan. There are no visible symptoms. Only the sufferer is aware of its presence at all. And why should anyone believe what that person has to say? Isn't she the one that was diagnosed with crazy to begin with? Fortunately, both my mother and my father are well educated in the physiological causes and outcomes of my diagnosis, bipolar type 2. The sharing of that knowledge has taught my husband and me that my struggles are not a sign of weakness, that the constant darkness reaching for my assuredness can be staved off if I follow the prescribed protocol. Take my medicine daily, go to therapy, and communicate with loved ones. Pray for strength and glory in the assertion that God is with me always. Once, I temporarily resided in that cruel, overpowering sorrow. I saw the exit and the cure right there within my reach. I prayed for God to pull me away from them. But God stayed right there with me as I inwardly screamed and outwardly sobbed and silently planned how to kill myself. I was completely surrounded by love. But my simplistic understanding of agape was not a comfort. It offered no relief of my pain. I wholly believed that once everyone got over the grief of losing me, that the burden they carried by loving me would be lifted. Entering that cycle once again, my logic offered a wave of promise, and I clung to that lifeline, if only for the futures of my children. I didn't want them to live out their lives knowing that their mother couldn't find the strength to continue with hers. I asked for help, and I spent a week in a hospital accepting it. I've never once been ashamed of my decision, but I am still haunted by my journey there. As humans, we're often self-absorbed enough to think that a suicide victim succumbing to illness means that we aren't enough to live for. We focus on ourselves. How could she do this to me? In reality, I imagine that most victims would answer that question with this: what do you mean? I'm doing this for you. You don't have to hold my brokenness together anymore. Go in peace. I regularly turn to God when I search for courage and strength. I imagine myself as the sparrow being so tenderly watched. I sing for my supposed happiness. I fall. I get up. Or I'm helped up by those who understand. I wrap my arms around myself and sit still with the God that I logically know is with me, but I can't presently feel. I think God comes in waves too. I can sit on a mountain and feel God completely overwhelm my capacity to love. I can get so angry and hurt so much for a loved one that I doubt God's reality at all. I can smile at the beauty of the ocean and the sound of children playing. I can sit in the midst of a deep depression and beg for escape and release. And throughout it all, I discovered that blessings, or God's simple presence, are chameleons. We're not able to see that love clearly and may wonder if it's even there. Yet, God is forever in me and I am in God. God doesn't hold my brokenness together. God surrounds every single piece and becomes a part of it and waits for the pieces to assimilate and form a new shape. And when those fragments splinter again, God transforms anew. There is peace in despair and hope in rain. It comes in waves, but the ebb and flow is everlasting.